We're running right into our crypto market. Okay, so for everybody who's joining us, El Salvador, they made some big moves recently in the news, catching everybody's attention by adopting Bitcoin as legal tender. Now, if you joined us for our Monday podcast, me and Wyatt actually went into this, and we went into this probably for about like 2 hours. And so, if you guys are really curious about, what a financial quant takes from this, and what it would take for Bitcoin to become a legal tender and overtake the fiat or our dollar. Really interesting talk. I learned a lot. I am a supporter of cryptocurrencies, but after talking to Wyatt, I'm definitely thinking twice about, the long haul where this is going. But let's get back to what we're looking at. El Salvador obviously making big news. They're looking at their renewable energy. They're looking at volcanoes. They're constructing the plans. I even saw the blueprints of what they're going to construct around the volcano. Looks completely badass. It's like new age, brand new, shiny. I love shiny. But here's the big question. How are they going to completely transfer over the use of their dollarization into Bitcoin? Now, the reason this is such a relevant topic is because we did argue this, and Wyatt made such great points that we are now seeing the result of what this looks like. One of the dark sides of this is that this is not considered legal tender. This is now considered forced tender. Forced tender means that they are now forcing people not just to, let's say there's other types of currencies that they're able to use. Like, let's say you're able to trade, your farm, your crops for the season for someone else's fish that they got in the ocean. Before, yeah, it would have been completely fine if both people agreed that transaction would happen. When it comes to forced legal tender, what we're looking at is that they're now forcing people to make transactions solely using Bitcoin. How does that look? That means in order for you to do anything, you have to adopt Bitcoin. This is not going to be looking good for people who can't have or don't have access to Bitcoin.
Or technology.
The technology alone is just going to be one of the hills and barriers to entry to cross. But what we're also looking at is that this is also history not repeating itself. I want to use that, what Jeremy said. This is history
rhyming. History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes.
This is history rhyming. We've seen this back in Soviet Union, back when, so El Salvador, let's just define it. There's an Article 7, and that's what their Bitcoin law came into action. Now we have Article 175 from the Soviet Union during their Civil War time, and this is the exact same thing they're doing. They're forcing tender in order to, you control the market at that point, but you're also creating, this is only during a time when you have militarization. Ooh, I think I fumbled that word.
Militarization.
No, never mind. I did pretty good. All right, and so the second time that we see this is also going to be in Nazi Germany. Unfortunately, World War II also showed that Nazi had their own forced tender. Both of these did not result very well for its people in the economy. This is hard to do. You can't just take one main currency and just switch it right over to a different currency and not expect things to not work. There's a lot of still questions in mind of how this is even going to go about. I know we talked last time about the need for a bank and the bank's ability to create mortgages that are affordable for people to create houses, to create businesses, to establish a strong economy. And unfortunately, El Salvador did show that the use of dollarization and the use of a 2% inflation over a 25 period allowed for banks to give out mortgages as a 7% rate, which for a Latin American country that is suffering from economic downfall, this is unreal. This is amazing. This is power back to the people. And unfortunately, due to where Bitcoin is, its volatility, and how it's still structured, this is still brand new. We're still figuring out what this really does. We're going to see if El Salvador jumped the gun, or this could have been one of those genius moves Why?
I,
What you got?
I think the main thing to take away from this is when you talk about progress, everybody, they always say, we have found what we believe to be the future. So that is going to be the future, whether you like it or not. It omits laws, hypocrisy, rules, moralities, ethics. It takes away from the masses and says this is the objective we're going to reach. So the important part of this, I think, takeaway is there's a flip side to these arguments, and it's not just in the whether the technology is sustainable, whether it's good enough, whether it can actually do what it says, whether it's secure, how many people like it. It's what is the legality and the reality of being able to take society and say we're going to change it into something else, and it doesn't matter if you like it or not. This is what's coming. This is what's going to be new. It doesn't matter if you can afford it. Doesn't matter if you like it. Doesn't matter if you vote for it. Doesn't matter. We make decisions. And one of the big things about this is that if there aren't a lot of centers of control, even though it's on the blockchain, there's nothing stopping funnels of corruption and fraud within the country. There's no regulatory body. There's not necessarily going to be a clear-cut system to make sure that everything is done fairly and equally. Because even though everything's recorded on the blockchain, there is no enforcement of anything. The blockchain does not enforce itself. You still have to have a way of keeping order. Yeah, you have a record, so it's easier to find all this information if you can track those individuals, but who enforces it and who decides to enforce it? Who creates the laws and who decides that those laws are valid? So that's the other flip side, I think, of progress that we have to remember. Is just because we want progress doesn't mean we can just do it. You know what I mean? There's a lot of other considerations. In this case, it's the legal and historical value of forcing a different legal tender and changing an entire system because you want it that way.
And I mean, and that's where we're seeing this is what totalitarian. Ooh, man, I cannot.
Totalitarian.
I'm gonna
you know what this
all big
reminds me
words
of?
today.
This reminds me of November 16, 2016, November 8, when India switched its notes, its 500 rupee notes and 1,000 rupee notes, and
devalued everything.
They banned 86.4% of their cash. 98% of all transactions is through cash. They had lines through for banks for changing these worthless notes now, worthless rupee notes that they had for their new rupee notes. And this was all done just like right away the government said it would help with less corruption and less tax evasion. But it was a painful transition. It was 50 days transition of brutality.
They reorganized the entire wealth structure. They said, listen, there's all this corruption stuff. We don't know how to solve it. So all your money's worthless. Everything you own is worthless. We're decommissioning all of our money. If you want money, you're going to get in line and you're going to get new money. And you know why it's going to happen? Because that's what we said. And all that stuff you own, everything, the valuation, done. It's gone now. I instantly devalued everything you held in your hands.
That was 1.3 billion Indians that had to go through this kind of thing. That's crazy. Hopefully the transition to Bitcoin isn't as brutal as this. The only setback that I see is that not everyone has the technology in order to sustain Bitcoin and keep paying for it. So I think it's going to be a slow transition, though everyone thinks that it's going to be like switch overnight, like in India. I don't believe that's going to be so. I think they're going to do a slow transition there because that could be very detrimental.
And even though El Salvador, part of the bill is like, we're going to offer training and we're going to try to give you resources, there's no guarantee that's going to be for everybody equally. And, with the problem with that is with power and with technology is what if you can't pay your bills in Bitcoin and other places, right? What if you can't? Like, what if there's a difficulty? There could be you could poke out a million little individual cases, but it's just a sweeping reform on a cutting edge of technology on something that's so new and untested it could be very dangerous for the population. And really, what is a country but a collection of its people? The ruling class, the people at the top, they make up a small fraction. The majority of the production and power comes from the people who are affected by those changes.
Absolutely. So, I mean, the story is only going to progress. El Salvador is just starting.
I also love how the picture on the screen it's El Salvador's big mistake, but then there's a picture of Kamala Harris and just stop blaming Kamala Harris. That's completely different, but it's just so funny. Damn it, Kamala! What did you do? It's all her fault.
It doesn't even
always
all her fault. Okay.